sincere thanks to Sir Bimant Tesil Sangma, Program Officer, NSS Don Bosco College, Tura, to the Office of the NSS Regional Directorate, Guwahati, to the Office of the NSS Cell, Nehu, Shillong, and other staff members of the college. I would like to thank the resource persons of the webinar, Dr. Father Joy Kachapalli Joseph, SDB, Director of Don Bosco College, of Don Bosco Boko, Dr. De Gracia Nonkanri, Program Coordinator, NSS Cell Nehu, who will give us the message, and to Mr. Deepak Kumar, Regional Director, NSS Northeast Directorate, who unfortunately could not be present here today. Thank you for sharing your expertise at this webinar. Thank you, dear resource persons, for sharing your expertise with us. The resource person, Dr. Father Kachapalli Joy Joseph, has completed his doctorate studies in Gandhi on the theme Gandhian concept of truth, epistemological and ontological basis for a theology of religions. Friends, there is no other resource person, I feel, has so much of knowledge on Gandhi than the resource person, Dr. Father Joy Kachapalli. Father Joy was my teacher, and he is thorough with the subject matter. Thank you, dear Father, for accepting to be the resource person at this webinar. I thank Dr. De Gracia Nonkanri, Program Coordinator, NSS Cell Northeastern Hill University, Shillong campus, for accepting to be part of this webinar. Dr. De Gracia will give us a message on this occasion. I would personally thank Dr. De Gracia for the trust and the confidence placed on the NSS Don Bosco College, Tura. I would like to express my sincere thanks to the technical team of the college, Sri John Satish and Sri Javelin A. Sangma, who made all the arrangement for this webinar. To all those who lend a technical support to this webinar, I would like to sincerely thank all of you. Don Bosco College is situated in a hill town of Tura in western part of the state of Meghalaya. The college was established by the Salesians of Don Bosco in the year 1987 to serve the cause of higher education for the people of Garo Hills in particular and the Northeast India in general. The college is considered as one of the prestigious colleges in a place where educational institutions are very few compared to the colleges or its counterparts in Shillong and other towns of Meghalaya. The college, during this time of the lockdown due to COVID-19, had conducted many webinars and international web conference. All this is possible only with the collaboration and the dedication of the faculty of the college. And I wish that this webinar conducted by the NSS Don Bosco College will also be a success. Be the change that you wish to see in the world was the beautiful invitation that Mahatma Gandhi gave to each one of us. And we continue to live that invitation today. Mahatma Gandhi was a true leader of masses. His life and teachings are a great source of inspiration for the youth of today. He was such an icon for the youth that showed the spirit of glory and way to freedom for Indians. His weapon, Satyagraha, and non-cooperation are still relevant and are followed by many. Mass leaders like Anna Hazare, Nelson Mandela, etc. uses Gandhian methods and ideals to promote rural development, increase government transparency, and investigate and punish corruption in public life. Gandhi brought the Hindus and Muslims together. The India we see today is all built by Gandhi. His thoughts, his methods, teaching, and ideals still relevant and inspire the youth of today. His teachings are being practiced by all in their day-to-day life. Gandhi's teaching has brought a huge change in political life of the people. Due to his teachings, India is moving on path to achieving a corruption-free, transparent, moral, and ethical government. Gandhi's teaching brought a huge change in individuals' life. Our attitude towards human beings, the environment, the plants, the animals has changed. His teaching inspired youth in fields of education, human development, and science and technological development. His teachings has prevented the Indian youth from being victim of terrorism and also prevented many joining the various terrorist organizations and spread of terror. The life of Mahatma Gandhi should serve as a beacon of light to guide humanity to a better world. He taught a lesson to all political leaders on how to work great social and political changes for the betterment of the humanity in every walk of life. He said, an Indian awakened and free has the message of peace and goodwill to give to the groaning world. It is true that a vast difference has come in the approach and mindset of Indians in these years of independence. Thus, it's imperative that people will look suspiciously at individuals who try to propagate the Gandhian principles. But despite this, it is impossible to deny his relevance and his inspiration. The only change that can be made is to serve the same cuisine on a different platter to remove the spiritual veil which cover it and modify his philosophy so that it appeals to the scientific mind of Indian generation. Young people of today have involved in all kinds of wrong works and do as they wish. Every year we celebrate Gandhi Jayanti, which we celebrated yesterday, which is a national holiday. And it goes waste as neither does anyone wants to follow his ideals nor the values that Gandhi teaches. Gandhi's dream was to make India an independent, but the one which he craved the most was that the youth take the message from his life and follow his ideals thoroughly so that India will be remembered as the land of virtues. As we take part in this webinar, may the values and spirit of Mahatma Gandhi live in our lives. May we be the change that we wish to be in the society. Once again, I extend a warm welcome to the resource person and to all who are taking part in the webinar via Zoom or YouTube. Thank you all for registering for this webinar and have a wonderful national webinar. Thank you. God bless you and Jai Hind.
Thank you, Father Principal, for the welcome address. Unfortunately, we do not have Mr. Deepak Kumar with us due to certain unforeseen circumstances. But we have with us Dr. Degracious Nonkenri. Before we give time to her, let me give a brief introduction about Dr. Degracious Nonkenri. Dr. Degracious Nonkenri did her MA and PhD from NEHU, Shillong. She is specialized in labor economics. She is also specialized in gender economics, and she has done her work extensively about the women workforce and the participation. And at present, she is the assistant professor of the Department of Economics, NEHU, Shillong, and she is also the NSS program coordinator of NEHU NSS cell. Madam, we welcome you and we give this time to you to kindly present your message.
Thank you. Thank you, Sri Biman Sangma, Father Bivan Mukim, the Principal, Don Bosco College, Tura, Dr. Joseph, SDB and Rector, Don Bosco Boko, Sri Biman Sangma, the convener of this national webinar, and the NSS Program Officer, Don Bosco College, Tura, our NSS volunteers, program officers, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Northeastern Hill University, Shillong, and the NSS cell NEHU, I take this opportunity to extend my warmest greetings to each and every one of you who are virtually present for this webinar this afternoon on the theme, The Relevance of Mahatma Gandhi for the Youth of India Today. Let me also take this opportunity to thank Sri Biman Sangma and his entire team for taking the initiative to organize this webinar today. I also put on record my sincere gratitude to Father Bivan Mukim, who has always been a great friend and a well-wisher of the NSS, and under whose dynamic leadership the NSS unit of Don Bosco College, Tura, has been able to undertake a number of extension activities and a number of programs, especially during these very, very trying times. I would also like to personally thank Dr. Joseph for taking the time to be present here this afternoon to act as our resource person for this webinar and to share your thoughts and ideas with all of us here. Thank you to one and all the participants for sparing your valuable time and joining us today. I hope that each one of you will be greatly benefited by it. As we commemorate the 151st birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi, the father of our great nation, we recall with gratitude the valuable contributions he made for the cause of freedom to each and every Indian. As a nation and as a people, we pay our humble tributes to this great Indian whose ideals and principles continue to resonate not just in our country, but throughout the world. I have to admit here that I'm actually not an expert on Gandhian philosophy or Gandhian studies, but the relevance of Gandhiji's ideas has not diminished, but rather seemed to have increased with time, and perhaps more so today. It is manifested in diverse ways of our everyday living. The India of today is a rather young India, where youth comprise a sizable proportion of our population. And youth are therefore increasingly viewed upon not just as the future of India, but the very instrument of change for building that prosperous, strong, resilient, inclusive, and tolerant India of tomorrow. In an article written yesterday by His Excellency the President of India, Sri Ramnath Kovindji, in the Hindustan Times, was beautifully captioned as "The Mahatma's life was his message." Now, it is very apt indeed, for the life of Gandhiji continues to inspire us today and perhaps in the generations to come. The renowned Gandhian principles of non-cooperation and civil disobedience has not only resulted in the birth of our great nation India, but has been imbibed by leaders and people across the free world till today. We have to understand and be clear that each of us has a role to play. And from where I perceive, it cuts across three levels: at the personal level as individuals, as members of the society, and to our physical surroundings or our nature. And Gandhiji's ideas resonate across the three. At the personal or the individual level, it involves the right conduct with excellence and truth as the main weapons to attain it. The slogan of Satyameva Jayate tells us that it is not just thoughts or words alone, but deeds done in honesty and integrity that leads us to this right conduct. Secondly, in our role as members of the society or as a collective, wherein we're both partakers and pargivers towards this nation-building process of revitalizing our communities through mutual cooperation and social reformation to address the evils of untouchability and caste system, just to name a few, and promoting the cause of justice, equality, love, and education among our fellow citizens, irrespective of caste, creed, community, or religion. And lastly, with regards to nature, our physical surroundings, Gandhiji's ideas are very clear and unambiguous on the environment, wherein he emphasized the need for cleanliness or clean air, in his words, by keeping our villages, cities, and our surroundings clean. It is in line with this that every year we commemorate his birth anniversary by organizing such cleanliness drives. We may not be in a position to do much, but in our own small way, I find that we can play our own small part. And it is in each of these ideas and at each level that we, our youth, And our youth organizations like the NSS, the NCC, and the NYK can play a proactive role. To conclude, in the words of Mahatma Gandhi himself, your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values, and your values become your destiny. And if any job is worth doing, it is worth doing well. Let us all come together to rededicate ourselves in this process of nation building and realizing the dreams of the Mahatma for a better India of today with a bright future for tomorrow. Thank you. God bless. And Jai Hind.
Thank you, Madam, for sharing your thoughts on Gandhiji's ideas and principles, which revolve in the three forms as individuals, as members of society, and our physical surrounding. Thank you, ma'am, for your inspirational message on Gandhiji. Before we give our time to our resource person for today, I would like to give a brief introduction about our resource person, Father Dr. Joy Kachapilli. Father Dr. Joy Kachapilli is a Catholic priest belonging to the Don Bosco Educational Society, Guwahati region, Assam. A postgraduate in philosophy and in Gandhian thought, he was awarded the doctoral degree by the Madurai Kamaraj University, Tamil Nadu, in 2004 for his dissertation, Gandhian Concept of Truth, Epistemological and Ontological Basis for a Theology of Religions. He is the author of Gandhi and Truth, an approach to the theology of religions in 2005. Also, Gandhi and Truth, a journey with the Mahatma for authentic living in 2011. And inspiring stories from Mahatma Gandhi also in 2011. He has also edited books on culture entitled Cultural Practices of Gandhi, Cultural Practices of Africa and African Cultural Practices. So besides these, he has published 37 research articles in various journals. I give the time now to Father Dr. Joy Kachapilli, and a gentle reminder for the participants. Anyone would like to ask any questions, you may please make a comment in the chat box. Yes, Father Joy Kachapilli, I give this time to you.
Good afternoon, dear Father Biven, the principal of Don Bosco College, the faculty members and the students. I'm indeed grateful. I'm indeed thankful to Father Biven for inviting me for this webinar. And the topic that we have chosen is relevance of Mahatma Gandhi for the youth of today. I want to thank Mr. Biven Sakma and Madam Dr. De Gracia Nongindri for the introduction that you have given. I'm indeed humbled, and I do not know what more to add after the wonderful, inspiring introductions, messages given by both Father Biven and Madam Nongindri. However, I shall try to add something more on the relevance of Gandhi for the youth of today. We are celebrating the birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Last year, we celebrated the 150th birth anniversary of Gandhi, and yesterday was his birthday. And on this occasion, I thought we could really consider the relevance of Gandhi in our society, and especially the relevance of Gandhi to the youth of today. Gandhi can be a role model for many of us, and his life, His teachings and his accomplishments are worth researching, worth listening to, worthwhile for our reflection. I have a feeling that people outside India admire Gandhi more than people within our country. However, I'm sure Gandhi will have a relevance for our youth today. Mahatma Gandhi was indeed a person who accomplished much for our country. And we need to understand his teachings from his own life perspective, from his own public work that he accomplished during the years of his life. And indeed, his leadership is something unparalleled in history. Now we are talking about relevance of young people. Who are the youth of today? Youth can be described as that segment of population which falls in the age group of 16 to 25 or even up to 30 years. According to United Nations, young people are that group between the ages of 15 to 24. And in some cases, youth is referred to as a majority. People are reaching the age of majority in which a person is given under the law. This age is 18 in many countries. And once a person passes that age, he or she becomes an adult. However, in general, youth is understood as a transitional stage in life between childhood and adulthood, rather than a rigid constant. In the context of some cultures of Northeast India, youth belong to that category of young people unmarried. And once they're married, they automatically are considered as an adult. In India, almost 3.33% of the population are youth. India's advantage in young population is evident when it is compared to other Asian countries. So this advantage also calls for responsibility. People need to grow responsibly in order to become real assets for the country. And so it is in this context that we are speaking about Gandhi, who can be a role model for young people. Now, one of the first things that we need to consider is this, that Gandhi was like any one of us in his young days. He was no different from any of us. As a young boy, young Gandhi was very fearful. He was afraid of darkness. He always insisted on a lighted lamp in his room while asleep. His nurse would encourage him to repeat the name Ram whenever he felt fear, and would encourage him to keep on repeating that name. And from here, he learned the practice of repeating the name of Ram, and which later he perfected as Ramanama, and spread this practice among his followers. And in fact, we know that when he was shot on 30th January 1948, he died whispering the name He Ram. Gandhi was also a fearful, a shy person. He was also an introvert. He was afraid of interacting with others. He would literally run back home after the school is over because he could not bear to talk to anybody. He was afraid lest anyone should poke fun at him. Even as a student at London, he could not face a crowd of people. In fact, on the eve of his departure from London, he, after qualifying for the law, he wanted to give a party to his friends, a farewell dinner to his friends. And at the end of the dinner, as custom is, he's supposed to give a farewell speech. And Gandhi had practiced it so well. He rehearsed it a number of times, and then he almost learned by heart the speech. But then when the time came, he was so completely lost that his memory completely failed him. And he just got up and murmured, "I thank you, gentlemen, for having kindly responded to my invitation." And he sat down. Or again, on his return after qualifying for the law, he wanted to practice as a lawyer in the court. And his first appearance in the court, where he's supposed to cross-examine the witnesses, he tried to get up. And at that moment, his heart failed him and his head was reeling and he could not ask a single question. He was a complete failure as a lawyer. However, Gandhi was a man who learned from his mistakes. In fact, from this shortcoming, he learned the value of economy of words. He also learned the value of silence. Gandhi acknowledged that he had a very poor handwriting. And in fact, later years, he would tell the children, the students, that they must give care to their handwriting. Likewise, he was also poor at games. He was afraid of others. As soon as the school is over, he used to run back home. First of all, he was afraid of them. And secondly, he had a keen desire to nurse his father who was ailing, who was sick. Again, as a young boy, he can be considered as a lawbreaker, a sort of a rebel. It is said that one of his friends convinced him through a series of lectures of the need to eat meat in order to gain physical strength and to fight against fear that haunted him. He hid from his parents this experiment of meat eating. He believed that if they come to know, they would even die of fear and shame. But then he believed in himself that it is his duty to eat meat so that he would be strong enough to defend his country and to win freedom for his country. And then he writes in his autobiography, "I persuaded myself that mere hiding the deed from parents was no departure from truth." Gandhi also indulged in smoking with his friends. And to buy cigarettes, he had to steal money from the servants and even from his family members. And at the end, Gandhi found life so difficult that he decided to commit suicide in sheer disgust at the fact that he cannot do anything without the elders' permission. However, Gandhi, when the attempt failed in committing suicide, he decided to write out a confession and submit to his father who was sick and requesting adequate punishment. But instead, he received an unconditional forgiveness and love from his father. He was deeply touched by the tears that fell from his father's eyes. Again, Gandhi acknowledged that he had a distaste for reading, that he never read anything beyond his school books. However, as a young boy, he chanced upon two important books. One was a play about Shravana, whose devotion to his parents, called Shravana Pitri Bhakti Nataka. He purchased that book with the permission of his father. And he read it very passionately. And he also saw the picture of this young boy, Shravana, carrying by means of slings fitted on his shoulders his blind parents on a pilgrimage. The book and the picture left an indelible impression on the mind, on his young mind. And he writes, "Here is an example for you to copy." And during this time, again, he read another book on, or a play on Harish Chandra, and he was captivated by this king called Harish Chandra. Now, Harish Chandra, he was a great king, renowned for his unflinching adherence to truth. Now, Vishwamitra, a well-known sage, wanted to test the king whether he was truly truthful or not. And so he caused the king to dream that he had gifted away the kingdom to Vishwamitra. And next morning, while he was narrating his dream to the people in the court, there comes Vishwamitra. And then Vishwamitra claimed the kingdom. The king was so truthful that he gave away the kingdom and made ready to walk out with his wife and child with nothing except the clothes that they wore. But that was the only beginning. The sage demanded that he pay dakshina, a recompense paid in addition to the gift, because without it, no gift will be complete. The king had now nothing except himself, his wife, and his children. He asked his wife to take employment as a maid servant at Kashi, a nearby kingdom, and himself became a bondman. That was how dakshina was paid. The trials and tribulations which ensued have hardly a parallel even in legends. The story proceeds to relate many pathetic incidents which bring out the cheerful sufferings of royal family and king's utter adherence to the pledge of truth. The climax was reached when the royal bondsman was charged by his master to execute the queen, now turned maidservant, for some fault she had committed. Vishwamitra, in his zeal to test the king, had managed to bring about even such a situation. The king did not fail in his duty. Harishchandra began to do his duty as bondsman. He raised the sword in order to slay his wife. But Vishwamitra melted. Staying the hand of the king, he said, "O king, there is none so great as you in all three worlds. You are the most truthful of all human beings." Commenting on this story, Gandhi wrote, "To follow truth and to go through all the ordeals Harishchandra went through was the one ideal it inspired me." Gandhi experienced rejection from his own people. After passing his matriculation in 1887, he was allowed to study law in England, in spite of the fact that there was stiff resistance from various quarters on religious grounds that the Hindus are normally supposed not to cross the seas. However, his mother allowed to go to London after making him take that solemn vows of not touching wine, woman, and meat. But even after all these, he was ostracized by his own people for crossing the seas. Gandhi was also a victim of sensual desires. On the night of his father's death, young Gandhi, now in his 16th year, was attending to his father. When his uncle offered to relieve him, he gladly accepted the offer and went straight to his bedroom and woke up his wife, who was asleep. Within 5 minutes' time, his father passed away. Gandhi felt deeply ashamed and miserable that he was not present when his father expired. In fact, Gandhi called this incident in his autobiography as double shame. His carnal desire, even at the critical hour when his father was dying, which required wakeful service. And he writes, "It was a blot I have never been able to efface or forget. And I have always thought that although my devotion to my parents knew no bounds, and I would have given up anything for it, yet it weighed and found unpardonably wanting because my mind was at the same moment in the grip of lust. Or again, another incident that occurred on his voyage to South Africa. There was a halt at an island called Zanzibar. The captain of the ship invited him for an outing. Gandhi narrates this incident in his autobiography. We were taken to some Negro women's quarters by a tout. We were each shown into a room. I simply stood there, dumb with shame. Heaven only knows what the poor woman must have thought of me. He could only entirely thank the Almighty for having saved him. That incident increased his faith in God and taught him to cast off the false shame. Now, these are a few examples to tell us that Gandhi was like any one of us. He had his faults, he had his weaknesses, but Gandhi was a man who was able to learn from these mistakes. Gandhi loved certain principles. Although he had these weaknesses, he loved certain principles from his childhood and he lived by them. Gandhi loved truth and he lived by truth. He learned it from his father, Karimchand Gandhi. Speaking about his father, Gandhi wrote, "My father was a lover of his clan, truthful, brave, and generous, but short-tempered. He was incorruptible and had earned a name for strict impartiality in his family as well as outside." Karimchand Gandhi had no education, but his rich experience of practical affairs stood him in good stead in solving the most intricate questions and managing hundreds of men when he served as prime ministers of both Porbandar and Rajkot principalities. In fact, Gandhi said that, but for the love he bore to his father, he might not have pledged to truth himself. It became an instinct with him to speak the truth, not because he realized the significance of truthfulness then, but because he felt he must do so for the love of his father. And again, the examples of Shravana as well as Harishchandra helped him to practice truthfulness in his life. A fourth influence was the influence of Tolstoy, the great novelist, Russian novelist, who influenced Gandhi in his shaping of his understanding of truth. His teaching penetrated the very core and matrix of his being. They presented in modern garb some of the great truths proclaimed by India's ancient seers. Speaking about his influence on Leo Tolstoy, Pyarilal, one of the secretaries of Gandhi, writes, "It was not Tolstoy's writing alone, but the example of his life, his passion for truth, and his ceaseless striving after perfection that enthroned him in Gandhi's heart and led him later to describe himself as a humble follower of that great leader whom I have long looked upon as one of my guides. In him, he found a kindred spirit, a single-minded seeker after truth, an aristocrat turned peasant and shoemaker in pursuit of the meaning of life, who dedicated his life and talents and genius at the service of humanity, while he himself strove to live by bodily labor." Gandhi, like Tolstoy, believed that each one of us is at different levels of truth, and he called it as relative truth. And what is one's life mission? It is to approximate oneself to the absolute truth, which he called it as God. And we are all at different levels of truth, and we are trying to approximate towards the absolute truth. By professing truth, Gandhi lived also an honest life. As a child, Gandhi had the reputation for strict impartiality, and every boy respected his reward and his decision. When players disagreed and fought among themselves, it was young Gandhi who was invariably who was the one who brokered peace among the warring groups. In fact, to diffuse differences among quarreling parties, Gandhi was always called upon, and he had that passion to do so. He always said the truth. Once it is said that with some of his friends, young Gandhi went to steal some of the bronze images of gods and goddesses from a nearby temple, Lakshmi Narayan temple, while the temple priest was asleep, having a siesta, in order to stage a mock Hindu festival of Jula. While removing the images, one struck against another, a loud clanging noise was heard. The priest woke and chased the little thieves. While escaping from the priest, some of the images were thrown into another compound to get rid of the incriminating evidence. The priest complained to young Gandhi's uncle about the incident. And in answer to his interrogation, all the boys gave uniform reply that they had gone into the temple to play, and the priest, on groundless suspicion, had chased them. As for the missing images, they had no knowledge whatever as to who removed them. When young Gandhi's turn came, he told the whole truth and named his cousin who had removed the images. Further, he confessed that only the cousin could tell where they had thrown those images along with the rest. And Gandhi could always tell the truth. And again, another oft repeated example of that spelling test. Mr. Giles, the education inspector, had come on a visit of inspection of his school. He had set 5 words to write as a spelling test. One of the words was kettle. Young Gandhi misspelled the word. The teacher tried to prompt him with the point of his boot, but he would not be prompted. Commenting on this incident, Gandhi wrote, "It was beyond me to see that he wanted me to copy the spelling from my neighbor's slate, for I had thought that the teacher was there to supervise us against copying. The result was that all the boys, except myself, was found to have spelt every word correctly. Only I had been stupid. The teacher tried later to bring this stupidity home to me, but without effect. I never could learn the art of copying." Commenting on this incident, later in life, Gandhi wrote, "Yet the incident did not in least diminish my respect for my teacher. I was by nature blind to the faults of elders, for I had learned to carry out the orders of elders, not to scan their actions." As a lover of truth, Gandhi was always concerned with minute details. In one of his visits to Satyagraha, Gandhi examined the dormitory of the boys regarding minute things such as how to patch up torn bed sheets, how to cut nails, etc. He told the teachers, "All these may appear to you trifles, but all big things made up of trifles. My entire life had been built on trifles. To the extent to which we have neglected to inculcate importance of little things on our boys, we have failed, or rather, I have failed. For it was I who launched the experiment of Nai Talim, his education system, but could not find time to conduct it myself and had to leave it to others. A sense of cleanliness, tidiness, and sanitation, in my opinion, constitute the very core of education. Punctuality is another quality of a truthful person. Gandhi told a companion, he alone can claim to have faith who in life ceaselessly endeavors to observe the law of God. For, as I have often said, he and his laws are one. The mark of a person of faith is that he is always awake and alert in little things. I claim to have faith in God, but then I keep my routine with clock-like regularity in respect of eating, drinking, rest, and work. Further, in a letter Gandhi wrote, he who is punctual in everything will not fall ill, and in any event will experience imperturbable calm. This is made possible by ceaseless remembrance of God's name. This is made possible by ceaseless remembrance of God's name. Let his name, therefore, abide with you always. Hence, to the votary of truth, punctuality is an important quality that gives peace. Gandhi loved a non-violent life, and he practiced it to perfection during his public life. Truth is realized through non-violence. Gandhi believed that God created us with souls and that all of us are brothers and sisters with a common Father, God. Since humans have soul, the powers within them are spiritual and not animal. Since each of us live by his or her own relative truth, the life's end to proximate towards the absolute truth. The relative truths that each one possesses may vary, and this can cause disagreements. To resolve these differences, one should not resort to violence like the animals, but instead, he tells us that we must use our spiritual powers. We need to employ non-violent means, even to the point of accepting sufferings in our lives. Hence, Gandhi advocates dialogue, patience, suffering, humility, compromise, except on principles, so that he says that we can win over all tyranny. Gandhi also evolved an organized form of non-violence in order to fight against evil structures in the society, and he called it as Satyagraha. It is this powerful movement organized by Gandhi as a social weapon to fight evil and injustice, as well as a means to inspire the masses with self-confidence in resisting with their own strength against all tyranny. Gandhi acknowledged his mistakes. Gandhi wrote out a confession, as we have already mentioned, after his indulgence in meat eating, smoking, stealing, etc., and submitted to his father, requesting adequate punishment. Instead, he received an unconditional forgiveness and love from his father. He was deeply touched by that incident. And so he writes, confession of one's guilt forms part of the life of a truth seeker. Gandhi said, a man of truth must ever be confident. If he has to equal, also need to be diffident. His consciousness of fallibility of human nature must make him humble and therefore ever ready to retrace his steps immediately he discovers his error. It makes no difference to his confidence that he has previously made Himalayan blunders. His confession and penance make him, if anything, stronger for future action. Discovery of errors makes the votary of truth more cautious of believing things and forming conclusions. But once he has made up his mind, his confidence must remain unshaken. The moment the error is discovered, He writes, I have ever followed the maxim that one should not let the sun go down upon one's error without confessing it. In fact, his autobiography is a frank confession of all his shortcomings. Gandhi made use of opportunities that came on his way. The inherent shyness that prevented him from arguing cases effectively in the law courts in Bombay, and his refusal to pay commission in order to collect work orders for drafting applications and memorials while in Rajkot, made Gandhi thoroughly depressed and discouraged and disappointed. While in this despondent mood, an offer came to him from an Indian firm in South Africa to assist a Muslim trader there in a case that involved another merchant from Kathiawar. The offer of a fee of £105 and a first-class return ticket fare was quite attractive to the young barrister. The work was only for 1 year, and he was told that it was not a difficult work. Thus, Gandhi set sail in April 1893, full of zest to his luck in South Africa. Or again, when the lawsuit in Pretoria was happily concluded through arbitration within the stipulated time of 1 year, Gandhi decided to return to India. But on the day of that send-off party, while going through some of the newspapers of South Africa, Gandhi chanced upon a little caption under the title Indian Franchise. It was with reference to the bill then before the House of Legislature, which sought to deprive the Indians of their right to elect members of the Natal Legislative Assembly. Gandhi was persuaded to stay back to help the Indians to oppose the bill. The farewell party was thus turned into a working committee. Thus, Gandhi writes, laid the foundation of my life in South Africa and sowed the seed of fight for national self-respect. An epic struggle commenced since then between the spiritual resources on the one side and political power reinforced with brute force on the other. And this struggle lasted for 21 years. Gandhi loved his religion and respected the religions of others. He learned to love his religion from his mother, Putlibai. Speaking about her, Gandhi wrote, she was deeply religious. She could not think of taking her meals without her daily prayers. She would take the hardest vows and keep them without flinching. During his London and South African days, he had opportunities to read sacred books of almost all religions. He had a number of friends belonging to different religious denominations and religious affiliations. And he himself underwent a religious crisis, whether to remain as a Hindu or to change his religion. Heeding to the advice of his spiritual guide, Rai Chandubai, he decided to read the sacred books of Hinduism. And upon reading them, he discovered the true riches of these books and decided to remain a good Hindu. Further, he believed in the oneness of God, who is a creator and preserver of the universe. He accepted that all humans are brothers and sisters created by God in his image. He held that differences in religions are only accidental and that all of them subscribed to a belief in God. Gandhi was also inspired by his father, who was fond of religions. And in fact, when he was lying sick, he used to invite members of other religions and they used to have discourses on religions. And young Gandhi used to listen to these discourses, which also made him love his religion as well as respect the religions of others. What are some of the principles that we can learn from Gandhi? As young people, what could we learn from Gandhi? One of the first thing that I thought that we could learn is this, that young people should be examples for others. Gandhi writes, a person is the product of his or her thoughts. What he or she thinks, he or she becomes. Gandhi demonstrated the power of his thoughts and actions. His physical actions were true expression of his values and principles. He ate vegetarian food. He went on long fasts to purify his body and his mind, as well as a form of social protest. He practiced the Indian idea of ahimsa, which means to do no harm to others. He believed that all living beings are connected, including all races of human beings as well as animals. That is one of the primary reasons why he practiced both vegetarianism and non-violence. For me, self-discipline is about controlling your actions and your habits to align them with your thoughts and your values. Thinking about doing good is not good enough. You must also take action to do well. When Gandhi went to England, after the first few months, he decided to become an English gentleman. He engaged tutors in French and he wanted to learn proper speaking. He bought expensive tailored clothes in order to dress himself as a gentleman. He invested in a violin and went for violin lessons because he thought that learning violin is one of the ways to become an English gentleman. But then the role of the gentleman failed to meet his needs. The gap he sensed between his inner and outward self was widening into a chasm. After about 3 months of these experiments, Gandhi woke abruptly from his dream of grandeur. How could changing the way he dressed make him anything more than what already he was? To change his life, he had to change his way of thinking. And that was something that went deeper than any differences in custom or culture. Better to be true to one's self than try and act like someone else. If my character made me a gentleman, he wrote, so much the better. Otherwise, I should forego that ambition. When once a Christian missionary came to Gandhi to get his advice on how to help the outcast people of Indian villages, Gandhi's answer challenged the very basis of his life. Gandhi told him, we must step down from our pedestals and live with them, not as outsiders, but as one of them in every way, sharing their burdens and sorrows. This is the heart of Gandhi's approach. He taught above all by personal example. He went and lived with the Harijans, and to encourage them to improve their health and sanitation, he himself became the servant. He was able to say, you must watch my life, how I live, how I eat, sit, talk, behave in general. The sum total of all those in me is my religion. There's another example that took place in the 30s. A woman came with her son to Satyagraha, the ashram where Gandhi was residing. And she wanted Gandhi to tell her little son that he must stop eating sugar because he was fond of eating too much sugar. Gandhi told them to come a week later. When they came, he told the boy to stop eating because he told the boy that it was not good for him to eat, and he gave him a piece of advice. Then he joked with the boy and gave him a hug and sent him on his way. Later, seeing the change within the boy, The mother visited Gandhi and wanted to thank him for the advice, for the help that he rendered to her son. And during the conversation, Gandhi asked why he didn't said that on their first visit. Gandhi sheepishly said, "Last week I too was fond of eating sugar." A second principle that we can learn from Gandhi is this, that young people should stand up for what they believe in and through peaceful means. Gandhi tells us an eye for an eye only ends up making the whole world blind. Hence, we need to promote non-violence. He demonstrated that oppressed peoples should not put up with their condition. They should stand up for their rights, but they should do it in a peaceful manner. Hate does not overcome hate. War does not overcome war. He inspired people like Martin Luther King in the United States, Nelson Mandela of South Africa, Benigo Aquina of the Philippines, and many social leaders to fight for the oppression in their countries. A third principle that we can learn from young Gandhi is this, that young people must have definite purpose in their lives. Gandhi had a goal, namely to set India free and to fight for the rights of the repressed, but through the use of non-violent means. His total commitment to truth and non-violence at times caused great tribulations for him and even misunderstandings. The constructive programs like development of village industries, Harijan service, education through basic crafts, all these he undertook were meant to accomplish the goal of freeing India economically, socially, and politically. One of the main traits that Gandhi possessed was his definite purpose. His vision and how he was to achieve this was a guiding light for the choices that he made. His main goal was to set India free and to fight for the rights of the repressed through the use of non-violence. His total commitment to this at times caused great tribulation. In fact, Martin Luther King once said, "Christ gave me the message, Gandhi gave me the method to fight against the oppressed people, for fight against the oppressors." Another principle that we can learn from Gandhi is this, that young people must undertake activities relevant to the people. Gandhi was approachable to people. He connected to the masses because he loved and took a stand for them. He opened his heart to them and was able to connect to them because he was authentic. He was able to show them his vision and his belief. He made an effort to be truly to understand his people. He spoke from his heart. He was able to motivate them. It has been said that when he spoke publicly, large audiences would listen to him, and he would be able to speak as though he was speaking individually to people. He did not put up any on a pedestal and segregate himself from his people. He had great empathy. He did not let his ego come between him and the people. He was very approachable. He connected with the masses because he loved them and took a stand for them. He opened his heart for them and was able to connect to them because he was authentic. Another principle that young people can learn is this, that young people need to learn to transcend adversaries. There were a number of times when Gandhi failed, but each time he used the failure to improve his leadership skills and to improve himself and the task that was at hand. In the initial years, Gandhi was afraid of speaking in public, but in later years, he became a good orator. Mahatma shows us that even the best leaders still fail and make mistakes. He also shows that difference between good leaders and great leaders is that great leaders learn from their mistakes. They're able to acknowledge their mistakes and learn and move forward. Still, another principle that we can learn from Gandhi is this, that young people must stop blaming others and learn to take responsibility. We argue that our current predicament is a result of a lack of certain resources. But often, those resources may not be necessary to improve our situation. In the midst of this blaming culture, it is easy to possess a distorted view of the issue and fail to notice the essence of the problem. The problem never gets resolved, it just gets bigger. Instead, focus on the problem and work upon it as Gandhi did. In his epic fight against the rights of Indians against the mighty South African government under General Smuts, Gandhi never complained against the hardships meted out to him and to his followers. Instead, believing in the power of nonviolence, he marched ahead till he achieved the victory. His enlightenment started from the realization that no matter how his environment changed, if his mentality, attitude, and internal metal were still the same, he would never be able to break through the chain. When he stopped blaming others, the piece of filth clogging his visibility removed itself, allowing him to see the crux of his problem. He became himself again. And I believe this is one of the important learnings that we can have from Gandhi, that we must stop blaming others, stop blaming the society, but learn to accept these problems and try to overcome them with our own strength, the inner strength that we have. Another principle that we can learn from Gandhi is this, that young people must have time for healthy laughter and fun. Being serious at work does not mean suppressing laughter and fun. Gandhi enjoyed the company of people like Rabindranath Tagore, and he was able to unleash humor at will. He once said, "If I had no sense of humor, I would long ago have committed suicide." It is said that once an American lady asked Gandhi, "When will you be visiting America? People are eager to see you." He replied, "Yeah, I have heard about that. They have kept the zoo and the cage ready so that anyone can see this strange creature." Or again, when a reporter once asked Gandhi, "Why do you always choose to travel by third class in a train?" He replied, "Simply because there is no fourth class yet." Just before attending a roundtable conference in England, a reporter asked him, "Do you think you are properly dressed to meet the king?" He replied, "Don't worry about my clothes. The king has enough clothes on both of us." Gandhi had time for fun and relaxation. And he believed that through these, one keeps himself busy as well as healthy. But then Gandhi also advised young people that in the process of this fun and health and fun, they must be make sure that these fund must be healthy, that these are not meant to spoil them. Let me now conclude. Gandhi is father of our nation. We need to be proud of him. On 70th birthday, great scientist Albert Einstein, on 2nd October 1939, he said, generations to come will scarce believe that such a man as this ever in flesh and blood walked upon this earth. We need to learn about Gandhi. We need to learn about him, and we need to speak about him. We need to follow his footsteps. It is my wish that as we celebrate Gandhi Jayanti, let us imbibe his ideals and ensure that they are followed and remembered by the future generations. Thank you very much for your patient hearing.
Thank you, Father Joy Kachapili, for the wonderful message. We are immensely blessed and inspired by the message given by Father Dr. Joy Kachapili, who through his deep knowledge has given us insight into the life of the great Mahatma Gandhi. We have learned those elements from which Gandhi received his inspiration. And being inspired is not enough, but we need to imbibe in those inspirations, uh, just as Gandhi was inspired and he accepted his mistakes. He made use of his opportunities and he loved his religion. And we can learn from his life that we need to set examples for others, stand up for what is right in a peaceful manner, and being responsible and learn from our mistakes. Thank you once again, Father Joy Kachapili. May God bless you, and we continue that you will bear fruit in the long run. Before, let us now take this time to, if there are any questions, we shall now take this time to have the question hour. And there are a number of questions posted by the participants. I shall send to you, Father, through the chat. Some of the questions are common questions, so I will not send them again. The first question was sent by Sir Brevel Motho, and he says, how can today's youth embrace Gandhi's ideology and principles of truth, peace, and nonviolence, not only by their thoughts, but by their actions and day-to-day life? This was sent by Sir Brevel Motho.
You would ask all the questions and I will respond, or how do you prefer?
Okay, I will send all the questions one by one then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Will it be fine? Yeah.
Yes.
The second question is by Mr. Sunit, and he has asked, are Gandhi's principles applicable or relevant in today's scenario? Another similar question was asked by the same person. Can we say that his principles have been lost in modern scenario, considering the modern lifestyle? So that was asked by Mr. Sunit. The third question is a similar question asked by two persons, Mr. Bisharlang Pingrove as well as Nikita Talukdar. Are Gandhian principles being followed in our country? Are the Gandhian principles being followed in our country? Asked by Bisharlang Pingrove and Ms. Nikita Talukdar. Another question is asked by Ms. Sylvia Gabel Moman, and it says, and she asks, if Gandhi respected all religions and believes that differences in religion is only by accident, then it would seem as if he is the father of all religions, wouldn't it? So that is the question asked by Ms. Sylvia Gabel Moman. And there are other question which says, in the context of these days, such as in the events of rape cases, and he has named Hastras and Nirbhaya. He asked, through peaceful and non-violence method in a Gandhian way, how would you respond to in the context of Gandhi's thoughts? This was asked by Mr. Makri Paul. Yes, so these are the questions. Last question is also there. If Gandhi believed that everyone is same, then why religion comes in between? So these are some of the questions which we have got from the participants. If you would kindly take the time to
so thank you very much
answer.
for these questions. I shall go one by one. Okay, is that okay now? So the first thing is about Gandhian ideology and principles of truth, peace, non-violence, not only in their thoughts, but also in their actions, day-to-day life. Now, the issue is this, that we interact with ourselves, with outside world, or even with God, our thoughts, our words, and our actions. What we think, we speak, and what we think, we also do. So therefore, the basis of our actions, our words, are our thoughts. So therefore, Gandhi believed that the first thing that we must have is, what are our thoughts? How we train our thoughts. If our thoughts are something about noble things, that we think something very noble, then obviously we will also act, we will also speak in a noble manner. So therefore, idea of truth, non-violence, peace, etc. First of all, it should be at the thought level. That am I willing to accept this principle in my thought? Am I willing to accept non-violence, truth in thought? And once I have accepted it, once I realize its importance, and then automatically my words, my actions will be truthful, non-violent, peaceful, etc. So therefore, for the young people, the first thing is that they must look at their thoughts and train their thoughts. Are their thoughts something about peaceful things, or are they thinking about something which is violent? Unfortunately, most of our time, as Gandhi would say, that we live by our animal instincts more than our spiritual instincts. He says that we have that soul force, which is given by God, created by God within us. But then unfortunately, we being more of animal living in the world, we become more of animal type of behavior. We exhibit that type of a behavior rather than we live by our soul. So therefore, Gandhi says that it is always much easier to use violence. It is much easier to use force. It is much more difficult to train ourselves to use non-violence. So therefore, Gandhi, through his training of his Satyagrahis, he tried to look at their thought patterns and try to train them in their mind. So for this, he had a number of vows. If you remember, in his ashrams, he had a number of vows. In fact, 11 vows he had. He made them practice. And all these vows were forward in order that they train themselves, train their mind in order that they become peaceful, they become non-violent, and so much so that they're able to face those assassins, they were able to face those political opponents with open arms. They had no weapons when they went for Satyagraha because they were trained. So therefore, my answer would be this, that young people, if they want to embrace his ideology, they must work upon their thoughts and their thought pattern is important. And once their thoughts are that of truth, peace, and of non-violence, then obviously their actions also will be non-violent, will be peaceful, etc. Okay. So the second question, something similar. Are Gandhian principles applicable or relevant to today's scenario? It is very much relevant in today's scenario, in the context of so much brutality that is going on all around us. Gandhian principles are very, very important. Gandhi is telling us that we must look into ourselves, that God has given us a soul, God has given us something unique, which other creatures, other animals do not have. So therefore, Gandhian principles are very, very relevant and applicable today. And unfortunately, people are not able to behave according to their correct thought pattern. As a result, you find violence all over the world. Then, can we say that his principles have been lost in the modern scenario? Sure, it is lost because of our behavior. Now, what are some of the things that enable, that has caused this? First thing is, in the modern world, we are living by material pursuits. Now, with the consumerism, with so much of things that are around us, that we have that desire to acquire things rather than live our life as a human being. And so as a result of our desire for things, as a result of our desire to possess things, we take to violence, and in the process, we lose some of these basic principles of Gandhi. So therefore, in the modern world, in the modern scenario, we need to change our lifestyle. In fact, Gandhi changed his lifestyle. Why did he change his lifestyle? In fact, as a young man, he was having a coat, pants, and he was dressed in suit. Why did he change his lifestyle? What was the reason? Because it is said that once he was traveling in South India, he found he was sitting down in a place, and women were trying to come and pay homage to him. And he noticed that one woman came at a time. And after some time, another woman came to talk to him, to speak to him. And he was wondering, why can't all these women come together? And then upon inquiry, he realized that in that group, they had only one sari. And so they were changing that sari and coming before Gandhi. So therefore, Gandhi realized how poor the people of India are, that they don't even have means to buy clothes for themselves. And then he says that, how could he wear such clothes? So that incident made him give up his clothing, and he became, as someone called him, as a half-naked fakir, all because he realized the sufferings of other people. In other words, he was empathetic. He was sympathetic towards the sufferings of others. That was possible because he had already trained himself to be truthful, to be non-violent, etc. So therefore, my take is this, that Gandhian principles are very relevant, and unfortunately, these principles are not really practiced nowadays because of the prevailing situation of consumerism and globalization and other issues that are in the world. Then regarding religions, now Gandhi believed in all religions. Now Gandhi believed that there is only one God. God is the creator of entire universe, and we are all created by God, and we are all brothers and sisters of one another, and God is our common father. Now, what happens in the world because of vagaries of culture, environment, circumstances, in different places, people began to believe in God differently. People had different ideas about God. And according to their environment, according to their culture, according to their customs, etc., they weaved a kind of a set of rituals, a set of rites, etc. And slowly, slowly, religions evolved. So therefore, there are many religions are there. Now, Gandhi says that all religions are good, but at the same time, all religions are imperfect. But what is important is that all religions are helping us to reach that true God, that we are approximating towards the absolute truth. We all live in that relative truth, the truth that I have at this present time. And I'm trying to approximate myself to the absolute truth. So therefore, to say that Gandhi is the father of all religions, no, it is not correct. That Gandhi is only trying to tell us that we should not fight in the name of religions, that we should not be using religion in order to win wars, etc. Now, in fact, Gandhi does not use the term God. He prefers to use the term truth. What is the reason? In fact, Gandhi says that at one time he says that God is truth, and later on he says that truth is God. Now, what is the reason? Because he says that in the name of God, so many wars were fought, so much of violence takes place in the name of God. And he says that there are people who do not believe in God. There are atheists are there are agnostics are there are people who do not even bother about God. But then truth, he says that all will accept. So therefore, Gandhi preferred to use that term truth, and he calls it as absolute truth to refer to God. And he says that all will accept the truth, that all are trying to approximate towards the truth. So therefore, Gandhi is not denying religions. Gandhi is not denigrating religions, etc. But then he says that whatever religion that you belong to, you live your religion well. If you are a Hindu, live a good life as a Hindu. If you are a Christian, live your Christian principles well. If you are a Muslim, live your Muslim principles well. And then that's enough, he says. And you can reach God. So therefore, Gandhi is not denigrating religions. He is not saying that religions are not important, etc. But all religions are important, and he respected all religions. And in his later life, he evolved what we call inter-religious prayer meeting, wherein he involved all the members of different religions for his prayer meeting. For what? He believed that all together must pray to God, the one Father. And he made use of this technique of interreligious prayer meeting, especially during the post-independent era, where there was so much of violence that took place during the partition. And through interreligious prayer meeting, he was able to bring peace among the warring groups, because he believed in religion, he believed in God. And then, and the next question, in the context of these days, events of rape, etc., method, Gandhian way, how would you respond in the context of Gandhi's thoughts? Now, as I said, we are living, as Gandhi would say, with our animal instincts. Somehow other animal instincts are come to the fore more than our spiritual instincts. So therefore, again, I'm going back to that first question, that we must train our thoughts. What are our thoughts? What do we think about? What are the things that we think when we are sitting down, when you are whiling away our time, when you are doing something? What are our distractions? Now, according to our thoughts, our actions and our words will follow. So therefore, Gandhi tells us very clearly that if you want to avoid all these crimes, etc., we must train our thoughts. And once our thought patterns are well taken care of, then Gandhi would say that we would be leading a non-violent life. So therefore, my take would be this, that many of us, and most of us, are living in that with that animal instincts, that we have not understood the worth of humanness, that we have not really understood that we have a soul that God has created within each one of us. Then if Gandhi believed that everyone is same, then why religions comes in between? Now, religion is a means to reach God. Now, we are all same created by God. We are brothers and sisters. We need religion to relate with God. Religion is a means. So religion gives us the techniques, the know-how, and whatever we require in order to reach God, relate to God. So, for example, Hinduism will give us set of prayers, set of rituals, set of ways of relating to God. So, for example, the fast that religion stipulates, the sacrifices the religion stipulates, these are all means to for us to relate to God. So, therefore, religions are necessary. Now, just because we are same does not mean that we can relate to God, because God is someone who is other than us. We are not able to see God. We are not able to talk to God as we can talk to a human being. We are not able to touch God as we can touch another human person. So therefore, God is totally the other. Now, how do we relate with God? Through the use of rituals, myths, fables, stories, etc. So religions enables us to relate ourselves with God, with our God. So therefore, religions are important for each one of us. And then, can you comment on Gandhi's principles with regards to the economy of today? Is this make in India similar to Gandhi's ideology? Now, to my mind, Gandhi already in his time, he spoke about that concept called Swaraj, and he wanted self-sufficient, self-reliant villages, where in every village, every form of industry must be there. He spoke about village industries must be there. So every village must be self-sufficient. Now, if you read his idea of a village, he says that every village must have a school, a hospital, and everything, every amenity should be there within a village. And he spoke about village crafts, that everything must be made within the village. And so he was in a way against large scale industries. He was in a way against industrialization. He was in a way against many things that take away the labor that is that can be put in by the ordinary people in the villages. So therefore, today's economy, which is a globalized economy, today's multinational companies, I wouldn't think that Gandhi would be very happy with them. He prefers a self-reliant. He wants a village which is can manage by itself without depending on others. Now, unfortunately, this idea was not taken up by the Indian government after independence. Instead, Indian government went for large-scale industries. They had their own policies. So Gandhian principles were slowly forgotten by the people of India, unfortunately. But then had people followed his principles, maybe we would have had all our villages self-sufficient, and we would have had a better economy, maybe, I do not know. So therefore, Gandhi's principles are not really followed in today's present economic scenario. But all the same, at the same time, you will find there are certain pockets where you find such self-reliance taking place in various areas. So therefore, the idea of that make in India is a very concept which is quite Gandhian, I believe, because Gandhi also believed that we can produce everything within our locality. And he spoke about Swaraj, and he spoke about things that uh, should be produced within our neighborhood. And so we should not be going out of our neighborhood, and we should manage our village and our life within the village. So therefore, making India, to my mind, is something similar to Gandhian ideology. Then any other question? Did I answer all the questions?
Thank you so much, Father, for answering all those questions. The last question was actually directed to Dr. De Gracia
Oh,
about the
sorry.
economy, but you have answered most of it anyway. But we shall give time to Dr. De Gracia to give her views whether the concept of Make in India is it moving away from the idea of Gandhian socialism, or does it actually still stick to Gandhi's idea of socialism? Ma'am, if you would kindly answer.
Okay. Thank you. In front of the expert, Father Joseph, I think I stand a novice, but he's covered basically what everything, whatever Gandhi has imbibed with regards to the economy. Because if you look at what Gandhi, I mean, just to add on just a little bit, Gandhi basically emphasized on rural development, wherein he tried to advocate for the growth of small and local industries and for local handicrafts to flourish. So it is, in a way, I may say, as Father Joseph has pointed out, trying to create a more self-reliant a village economy, a self-reliant people, which has been present, which is actually what we call Atmanirbhar, which is actually Atmanirbhar. So if we look at this from this point of view, the concept of Swadeshi that he has talked about, he is trying, he actually laid the foundations. He actually laid the foundations of self-sufficiency through strengthening of the local and the rural economies, which I think is something which we also need to which we are currently refocusing on. We are refocusing on as we try to strengthen our rural economies. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, madam, for the answer, for your insight into the question. And thank you once again, Father Joy, for answering all those questions. And I hope that all the queries have been answered to all the participants. Before we wind up, there is just one announcement to all the participants that the feedback form will be sent to you in the kindly fill the feedback form. That is one announcement. And I now give the time to one of the NSS volunteer, Ms. Singangchina Sangma, to propose the vote of thanks.
A very good afternoon to everyone. Respected Father, Dr. Kachapili Joy Joseph, Rector Don Bosco Bokpo, respected Dr. Decretion Ongkinri, Program Coordinator NSSL Nehu Shalom, respected Father Bivan Mukim, Principal Don Bosco College Tura, respected Sir Biman Tesil R. Sangma, NSS Program Officer Don Bosco College Tura, and all the dignitaries and the participants present here in this webinar. It gives me immense pleasure to express my gratitude to everyone present here. I, Singangshina M. Sangma, on behalf of NSS volunteer of Don Bosco College Tura, would like to deliver a vote of thanks for this event to all the dignitaries and the participants present here. We are grateful to our resource person, who is also the main speaker of this program, Father Dr. Kachapli Joy Joseph SDB, Rector Don Bosco, who spared the time from his busy schedule to grace this webinar with his extremely relevant address on the relevance of Mahatma Gandhi for youth of today. Thank you, Father. We, the youths of India, will try to cultivate the principles of Mahatma Gandhi and the advice you gave us in real life. Thank you, Father. We are also grateful to Dr. Decretion Ongkinri, Program Coordinator NSSL Nehru, for giving us an important message on Gandhian principles. Thank you, ma'am. We are also grateful to Father Bivan Rodriguez Mukim, Principal Don Bosco College Tura, who is also a patron of this program, and Sir Biman Tesel, our Sangma NSS Program Officer Don Bosco College Tura, who is also the convener of this program, for organizing this webinar. Thank you, Father. Thank you, sir. Last but not the least, this webinar would not have been successful without the participation of wonderful audience. We would like to thank all the important dignitaries, all the NSS volunteers, and all the participants of this program. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Singangchina. Once again, I thank Father Joy Kapachapali for sharing your insightful, for sharing your deep knowledge and wisdom with us. Thank you, Dr. Digracia Nongkinri, for always being supportive to Don Bosco College And once again, I thank all the participants for participating in this national webinar. A feedback form has been sent. I request you all to kindly fill the feedback form. Thank you. Also, I thank our principal for organizing this webinar, for giving us an opportunity and always supporting the NSS. Once again, I request all the participants to kindly fill the feedback form. Thank you.
Thank you, Biman. Thank you, Father Biman. Thank you, Father Joe. And thank you to our dear NSS volunteers and to all the participants for joining in. Thank you so much
Thank you very
for
much.
having me here, and my very best wishes to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you, Father Joy.
Yes, thank you very much.